So Jessica, thank you very much for setting this up for the ELabNYC 2017 program to speak with the I-Corps Ventures.
It's our pleasure. So I just want to start off by saying thank you for all of the I-Corps members who were able to get on the call today. We definitely appreciate that you guys are still representing I-Corps, and we think this is a really great opportunity for you in joining with the ELab, or at least applying for the ELab. I was going over numbers recently, and it looks like of the last 2 ELab cohorts, I-Corps members just from NYSERN alone have made up about 10% of each of the cohorts, which is kind of impressive.
Yep, we love I-Corps teams.
Yeah, and I think it's partly because of the I-Corps is great at starting you guys towards business acumen. We give you a lot of that jargon to begin with, but ELab it's been a very natural step for the ventures that have been a go in I-Corps, because it really helps develop that business acumen, and it has extremely high visibility. So this is a huge value for the I-Corps teams, and I want you guys to keep that in mind while Mary gives you the details about the program. Mary, do you want to go ahead and take it from there?
Yeah, this is great. Thank you so much, Jessica. And we have loved this collaboration with the I-Corps program. It's been wonderful. We've had it since the very first year before the nodes were even set up. We had a team that had gone to California, Stanford, to take one of the earliest versions of I-Corps. So we love the program. We love it as preparation, and when we heard by the second year that ELab was a natural next step. So for those of you who are committed to starting a venture, we welcome you, and this is an opportunity for us to share the ELab program with you and to help you make a decision about whether you should apply. It's a big commitment, so we want you to be fully informed, and we are happy to answer questions during this info session, or you're welcome to send us emails or call us, and we can direct you to other alums if Charlotte doesn't answer your questions today, or if you want to talk with ELab team members to discuss any specifics of your application. I will just point out, there is a workshop that is following this online with the same call-in information at 2 p.m. It was rescheduled. If you are seriously considering applying for the ELabNYC 2017 program, we highly recommend that you attend this workshop. The workshop that follows from 2 to 3 is a question-by-question review of the ELab application. So it will give you a feedback on how screeners look at applications, and hopefully help you avoid any minor mistakes you might make that screeners might focus on to be able to write as strong an application as you can. So with that as background, let's get into ELab. So we are now in the 5th year of the ELab program. We're very fortunate to be here after 5 years. We work at the very earliest stage of a company when they're forming. About half of the ventures who are invited to participate in ELab have not been incorporated when they are admitted. Most of the people who complete ELab do incorporate within 6 months of the program completion. The program, we are in one of the first phases of the program, which is the meeting and outreach phase. By the end of the program, you will be debriefing us and telling us what you want to see in next year. But before then, you go through a lot of education and business networking. So this is an image right here of a roundtable dinner. And what you're seeing in the foreground are ELab venture teams, and around the periphery, that is sort of the back ring of the image, are mentors and business advisors who are from Roche, who are from Pfizer, who are from Canaan Investment Partners, who are from NYU's Tech Transfer Office. We try to bring for you a group of people who can help you build your business. You are coming because you are committed to build a business, and we are here to help you develop business skills at the very earliest launch stage of your venture and work with you for the first 6 months of that venture. So what does that look like? We've been at this for a while. We call it a long-standing track record, but it's been 4 years now. We've seen 76 companies come through the program and complete it. A little more than half of them have raised funds during the program. A total of $35 million in funds have been raised during the program collectively by all 4 cohorts and all the teams. There have been 2 exits and there have been 2 mergers to date. The data about how much where that $35 million comes from is broken out in the bottom left corner of this. So we're seeing 2 graphs. One in blue is the amount of money that collectively the cohort entered the program with, and the green is the bar of what they left the program with. So the delta between the blue and the green for the 4 years adds up to $35 million. You may recognize some of these alum companies of ELab. A number have gotten quite a lot of press and have raised money and have hired people, and all of this is very encouraging to the New York City Economic Development Corporation, which created this program to help build a bioscience industry in New York and encourage entrepreneurship from research institutions in their commercialization efforts, so that more jobs and more investment can be developed in New York City in the life science industry. You're going to hear from one of the ventures from the 2016 program, which is Mouse Sensor, a CUNY-based research technology. And Charlotte DeHoltz was in the I-Corps program last year and followed immediately into the ELab program and was a real all-star. So, you know, we're really thrilled to have her speak with you. This adds one of the questions, which is, what are we looking for? We are looking for teams that show a commitment to building a business. So one way of describing that is passionate. Another is high integrity. We need that because we are able to build our network for you based on the integrity of the people who've come before you. And that really, now you are the beneficiaries of 4 cohorts worth of scientists and engineers who have done research and who have launched their businesses in New York. And they have done very well, and we've all been the beneficiary of the personal integrity of these people and their commitment to continuously solving problems that come up and moving forward their business. But there are some things that are biases. We'll go through more of them in the workshop on strengthening your application. But you should be aware that the program, and this is usually not an issue for I-Corps teams, it has a focus on IP-based ventures. So you verify that with your tech transfer office at your research institution, that there is a trade secret or a patent that is possibly being filed or has already been filed. Screeners really want to see that, and these are researcher-led ventures. Some applicants have capabilities in to take their technology into other areas, other industries, including clean tech. That's great. In this program, we're only focusing on the life sciences applications. ARL Design was in I-Corps and came through ELab afterward and had participated in a New York City program called Power Bridge for Clean Tech, and we just encouraged them to do ELab when they weren't doing one of the other, the Power Bridge program. And we're very enthusiastic about them. They've done great, have got a phase 2B for their work, and they're really moving along. We have a very broad definition of the life sciences technologies. About 15% of the teams are research tools every year. We have on average, one material team every year. We have about a third of the ventures are diagnostics and devices, about a third of the teams are therapeutics, and then we have imaging teams and usually one health IT team. So it's a broad definition. It makes for an exciting class because there are people with a lot of different backgrounds, including MBAs and physicians, as well as engineering scientists, faculty in the program. One of the big opportunities at ELab is engaging with the network. We have, over the course of the last 5 years, developed a group of entrepreneurs. You see entrepreneurs on our advisory group representing materials, representing therapeutics, representing software, as well as investors, tech transfer offices, foundations, hospitals, and an accounting firm that works with the majority of the IPOs and Series A's and B's in the life science field in this community. We also are very fortunate that corporations have in the community come to support the ELab program. There are over 65 employees of these firms, which are listed here: Pfizer, Boehringer, Ingelheim, Roche, Konica, the law firms Goodwin Procter, Pryor Cashman, White & Williams, and Moses and Singer, who are also involved in the ELab program. Microsoft, BizSpark has a huge commitment to the ELab program, as you'll see. Target Health, a CRO, and TriNet, an HR consulting firm that provides benefits, services to very small companies, have all been very generous. So 65 employees of those companies are engaged with the ELab teams. In addition, there are other mentors, including entrepreneurs and individuals with other specific expertise who get involved in the ELab program. So we continually develop that mentor pool to help you develop your ideas into businesses. How is this program different? Jessica mentioned about the opportunity to move into ELab and get a lot of visibility. Well, we talked about that a little bit before in terms of the network, but one of the things that we really encourage you to think about this is that this is a very specific stage of company that we're looking at. Companies such as Montour and iCore are perfect matches because you've already got some exposure and been thinking about what the business is and decided to move forward. The people that you're working with as coaches, these are paid coaches that you will work with every week, have experience as founders and founding team members of entrepreneurial ventures in the fields in which you're starting businesses in. We have a curriculum that is specifically developed for scientists and engineers, and we work with you to develop a customized support network. So you're working on your business. We're not working on case studies. You're working on your business throughout the program. The major blocks of the program are listed here: a 6 full-day boot camp, Thursdays and Fridays in January. You can see the full schedule of activities on the website, ELabNYC.com, under the schedule, program schedule. There's 4 months of coaching from February to May. Those are web-based weekly calls, and then there are networking events that start with the program orientation on December 12th and run through June 30th. 20 ventures teams are invited to participate, each cohort, and it's a very rigorous interviewing process. So look at the schedule, make sure you're available. We do require 100% participation at program events, and this year we are standardizing a series of workshops by web on Wednesday mornings from 8:30 to 9:30 a.m. So go ahead and check your check your schedule and make sure that you're available. If you have major commitments that are going to take you out of the country or prevent you from attending these, this is probably not the right year for you to do I-Corps. Not I-Corps, they do the ELAB program. The reason why is that we invite specific people to attend individual events, and we're counting on everyone being there so that they can make the introductions and meet at these events. So really seriously look at your calendar and make sure that this works for you now. I think at this point what I'd like to do is turn this over to Charlotte to talk to you about what it's like having come from I-Corps to go into the ELAB program. Does that sound good for you, Charlotte?
That's perfect.
Okay, well, let me change the presenter here, just a second for everybody. The screens, we're actually swapping them from one desktop to another, and then Charlotte will.
Do you see my screen?
That looks good.
Okay, so hello everybody. My name is Charlotte. I attended I-Corps last fall, 2015, and so maybe a little bit about myself, just so you know who's talking. So I was trained as a bioengineer in Belgium, and I did my PhD in Antwerp, and then I moved to New York City, and the past 5 years I've been working as a postdoc on this technology which we call the mouse sensor platform. And it was last year in August that we filed for a patent because we had found that we created mice that were super sniffers. So they're literally super sensitive to specific odors, and we can customize them so they can be super sensitive to sniff out bombs or drugs or narcotics or basically anything. At least that's what we started with. And so we figured, I mean, the reason why we did this in the lab was for a totally different reason. So this finding was very serendipitous. But we realized that there's a lot of potential in having an animal with a super sensitive sense of smell. So what we did is we applied for a patent, and then we started talking with our tech transfer office, and I think that's a very important starting point, is to build a really good relationship with your tech transfer office, because all the patents that are filed or made or invented at a university, even though you are the inventor, they are owned by the university. So you want to have a good relationship with the tech transfer office so that you can talk about licensing this exclusively in the future. And they also introduced us to the I-Corps program. So that's when we enrolled for the I-Corps program. I had heard about them. I hadn't talked to anybody who did the program before, and I think I'm very happy that I didn't, because I thought it was super tough. So you're up for something, but in retrospect, it was extremely helpful. But doing the program is tough because they require a lot from you. And but then also in retrospect, I think I-Corps was the best preparation for entering into ELAB. So while I was doing I-Corps, I was at a postdoc meeting at Columbia, and that's when I met one of the ELAB people, and they introduced me to the program, and I thought, ooh, is this something I should do in the same year? Because it's very, it's again very time consuming and very tough, so maybe I should wait until next year. And I'm actually very happy that I didn't wait until this year, because it's the perfect match, really, both programs. And I think it's great if you start with I-Corps and do ELAB immediately thereafter. So they are complementary in the sense that when I-Corps ends, I guess it's somewhere going to be in November, December, you have like a breather for a few weeks, and then you go into the ELAB program. Everything is still fresh and new, and yeah, I think it's great. Yesterday, actually, I wrote a quote from somebody who said, nobody ever wished they did something later, so I think it's very good to do it sooner than later. So as I told you, the whole startup adventure begins with customer discovery. And I guess that's what you're all embarking on right now. It's the whole process of getting out of the building and talking to people, seeing what the problem is, and if your technology somewhat solves it. And that is a very, very important part of a startup, because we thought we had this very cool technology, but we hadn't talked to any potential customer in the industry. So that's the thing. I mean, I spent the last 13 years in a lab. I don't have an MBA. I don't have any business background or anything. So we are super specialized in what we're doing, which is really molecular genetics. And we talk to scientists, and we talk to at conferences, at very specialized scientific conferences, but we don't talk to the real world, which is the people who are going to buy your product. So that was for me a total eye-opener. And so here's a slide of my final presentation, our final presentation in November of 2015. Where we had to present our lessons learned video and PowerPoint. And this is basically where we started out with. So I'm not sure if you're familiar with the lesson learned part. You really have to sort of tell the story of your journey throughout I-Core, your 7 weeks of suffering and learning. And so basically this was my first slide saying, look, we had this customizable biosensor, and we were going to go after Ebola, narcotics, cancer diagnostic, tuberculosis, explosives. So we had this whole portfolio. So then we started testing all these hypotheses, because that's really what it is when you want to start a startup. It starts with an idea. You know, it's not yet a company. It's just an idea that grows in the lab and that gets validated in the lab and maybe published, but it's still an idea. So it's not something substantial yet. So we started testing all these hypotheses, which I thought was a very interesting way of looking at the problem. And then we actually realized throughout the whole I-Core program that we had to take a complete detour and actually go back to where we started, which was in the fragrance world. So that was a super important finding that we got through I-Core, was really that we were not going to make a super sniffer to sniff out something specific. We wanted to make a library, or actually fragrance companies were interested in a library of humanized mouse sensors to actually learn to perform a sort of screening service for their existing perfume palette. Because we can also use human receptors in our platform. So that was a very, very important finding, and that's really where we started when we went into the ELab program. So, and then I like to say that your whole startup adventure really survives with ELab, because it's one thing to have an idea, you have it tested, you say, okay, this is, because at the end of the lessons learned, you have to say whether your startup or your idea is a go or a no-go, and it's totally fine if you find after 7 weeks of customer discovery that it's a no-go and that you have to go into a different direction. But we decided it was going to be a go, and but then we were like, okay, what next? Because we don't know anything. I mean, my now co-founder is the professor who I work with, so he's been in the lab for the past 30 years. So he had no idea about business development, about company development, about financing, because it's different, the financing of a company than applying for grants in a lab. So we really said to ourselves, okay, we need to get into ELab, because otherwise this is never going to happen. So That's another thing. We just totally went for it, and I think that is true for both ELAB and iCore. You just have to go for it. You just have to 150% say, this is what we're going to do the next 7 months, and we're going to put all our effort in to get the best results, because they give you such a tremendous amount of information and networking possibility, and it's really up to yourself to decide what you take out of it. And we just totally went for it. So basically, what we learned, I just have some words here. So the first thing we really learned was to give our company an identity. So one of the first things in ELAB is they say by next week you have to have a website, you have to have business cards, you have to start thinking about a board, an advisory board. This is scientific advisors, business advisors. You have to start thinking about whether you're gonna incorporate as an LLC or an INC. So you also, with company identity, I also think a little bit about the house style. As you can see, the style of my slides, and we designed a logo, and everything sort of comes together and becomes a real thing. It's not just like, yeah, we're thinking about starting this startup. It's gonna be a startup. We in February, so the program started January, so in February 4th we incorporated as an LLC. So we started thinking who's going to be CEO, CSO. We had a board together, I think by March. Definitely in January we had a website, so you can design the website yourself. I was very fortunate to have a very talented husband who could do it for us. He also made our business cards, and those business cards are also super important, and they spend a lot of time on it during ELAB. Is that that is like the first thing you give when you're networking. I mean, people, you have to know what has to be on there, and it's not something trivial. It's actually a very important part of the identity of your company. So that's one thing we learned. Second is very important, business development. I'm sorry, I forgot an L here. So Mary already mentioned it, or maybe Jessica. You get introduced to the jargon. So as a scientist engineer, I had no idea about all these things. But all of a sudden, in a few months, you can really start talking about valuation, finances, operational plans, P&L. I've never heard about a P&L. It's a profits and losses Excel sheet, revenue streams, all these things that when you are talking to people at potential networking events, you actually know what they're talking about. And even though you don't have to have a super, I still don't really get valuation. Maybe I shouldn't say that out loud, but it's something so, for me, difficult to grasp, especially how to value your own very early stage startup company. But it's, all these terms get introduced to you during the boot camp, and you do exercises, and it's very intense, but it was the steepest learning curve I've had, and I've been to school for a very long time. So so that was a very important part, I guess, of ELAB. And the third thing we really learned was define the problem even more, because that's something that iCore does very, I mean, they're very strong about that, defining the problem. What is the problem that you're going to solve or trying to solve? And because ELAB also works with you towards a pitch day, which is in April somewhere, so it's somewhere in the middle of the program. And then they have a template of, let's say, I don't know, 12 slides or something. And one of the first slides is the problem slide. And it's very important because it's sort of the hook of your presentation, and you sort of have to convince the audience that you're really addressing a defined problem. And I know for us that was a very hard yeah, it was very hard to define because we have this platform technology, so there's many problems. So one of the things that they also teach you, and it started in iCore and it went on in ELab, is really focusing. Like, okay, you have a platform technology, but you have to talk to people and you have to choose one application and go for that one for now. And so that was very important. Then, of course, communication and networking. And so network is one thing. I mean, Mary can introduce you to anyone. I mean, if you say, Mary, look, I need somebody at that foundation and I want to talk to them, can you maybe make an introduction? I mean, if you're in ELab, she will somehow find a way, or another teaching team member will find a way to get you to that person. So that's one thing. Then we got introduced to mentors. I still have those mentors. You get also introduced to the New York startup scene, which is still, you know, it's vibrant, but it's not super big yet. So it's nice to be part of this starting scene and ecosystem in New York City. And you know, meet the same people in different environments, and it's really nice to walk into them again, and then they will, you know, introduce new people they met, and it's a very good, like, community to be part of. And then the other part is really communication, because as a scientist, it's not so hard to, or I mean, it's easier to communicate your science in a very scientific way. But that's not what they want to hear at all, because they're not scientists. Most of the people who are in the investor room are not scientists, so they don't want to care about a promoter, enhancer, genetic code. Well, you know, you have to take that all out, which is really looking at your invention from a totally different angle, and learning to communicate your business was maybe one of the most important things I got out of ELab. Um, so then, yeah, you really have to be flexible. I mean, you during the whole weekly meetings, you know, you go over certain materials that were taught during the boot camp, and it's very nice because you can everything apply on your own company. So it's not just a case study. The case study is your own company, which is very interesting. But you have to be flexible. I mean, it's very constructive criticism, but I think it's important to do something with it and not to be persistent in, you know, keeping going down the road that you think is best, because maybe sometimes it's good to take a step back and take it a different direction. So that's the whole pivoting thing that really started in iCore. I mean, we've pivoted quite a few times already, because during ELab we actually talked to customers again. I think that's maybe my next. Oh no. But anyway, we talk to customers again, because customer discovery really never ends, and I'm sure iCore is going to like to hear that, because it's really true. You keep talking to potential customers throughout, even after iCore. I mean, I have calls every week just to get insights from their side. And so you have to be able to pivot and go into a totally different direction. Because, for example, during ELab, I think after, I don't know, 10 weeks or something, we pivoted and we were going to use our platform now. Instead of going after fragrance, we were going to go after disease detection. So that's something you just have to, I guess, learn to deal with. And then another important point, I think, was the funding part, because obviously you have this great idea, you maybe have a patent, you incorporate your business, you're still thinking about all the possible experiments that need to be carried out before it's actually a product. So who's going to pay for that? And I think that was also very interesting to learn about the different ways of funding. So you have, of course, the venture capitalists, but then you have the private investors, the angel investors. I've never heard about an angel investor before. Um, so those are people who are not part of a big venture capital funding, but they're often part of angel groups who invest in interesting technologies. So there's also some groups involved in the ELAB program who give you tips about how to present to angel groups. But then we learned that we were super early stage and we actually had to hit certain milestones first before private money would be invested or interested in us, because it was still too risky. So we basically had to de-risk, and that's when we learned about non-dilutive funding sources, such as small business innovation research grants, for which we applied for one in June. We're applying for another one in January. We learned about foundations, which was incredibly important. There's so many foundations who have money, and it's what they call free money. So it's not, they don't want equity in your company, because that's also, if you go to private money directly, you have to give away a certain percentage. And what is that going to be? Because it's, you don't really know the value yet of your company. So it's very hard to think about these things. So if you are very, very early stage like we are, it's maybe interesting to work with this non-dilutive funding first. So and it means that you don't dilute your own ownership of the company. So it's just free money. So we actually got introduced during pitch day to a person who works at Merck. That's also the thing, you talk to people, and important lessons can come from very different angles and very unexpected angles. So there was this guy came up to me, he liked what we were doing. He said, I have a friend who's working on Parkinson's disease, and apparently he found somebody who can sniff out Parkinson's. Maybe you could, go and look into that. And now we have applied together for a Michael J. Fox Foundation grant to go after Parkinson's super sniffers. And this person in the UK is our collaborator, and he wrote a really strong letter of support for us. So that is something that I would not have been able to do without the network provided by ELAB. What else? Oh yeah, so customer discovery never stops. So also, for example, if you go for SBIR, it's it can be by the NSF or the NIH, so it's from these federal funds, but it's really dedicated to small companies who need to reach a certain milestone to overcome what they call the valley of debt, where it's the valley of debt between academic research and private investments, and that's basically where we are. And they love I-Core members. They love people who really have talked to potential customers, because they don't want to see a simple academic grant. They really want to see your vision into commercialization, even for the first phase grant, which is 6 to 12 months. It's very important. So then, yeah, another stupid thing, but it's actually very important. We learned how to do PowerPoint as a pro. So we make PowerPoint. I mean, I make PowerPoints every 3 days, and I have this whole stack of different decks that I cut and paste into decks when I go speak to somebody, because we also learned that every audience is different, so you have to tailor your presentation to every specific audience, whether it's a VC or it's a foundation or anything else. I'm sorry. And I think this is my last slide, which is actually my first slide in most of the talks I give. So we are mouse sensor. We are specialized in the genetic manipulation of sense of smell, and our Sniffer platform can be used to detect, discover, and modify odors, and we see potential opportunities in 3 different industries: military and defense, flavor and fragrance, and pharma and biotech. So that's sort of our very short 15-second elevator pitch, which is another thing that ELab just doesn't stop. They want you to practice your elevator pitch and change it and reiterate it over and over and over and over again. So yeah, this is what I have, and I'm very happy to answer any questions.
Charlotte, thank you so much. This is a great presentation and background on your experience having come out of through the I-Corps program and then immediately come into the ELab program. I think getting some questions from people. There was a question from one individual who, as a result of the I-Corps program, realized that their initial target market is not life sciences. And so the question is, okay, where do you go after you do I-Corps if you don't have life sciences now? So that's a real tricky question, right? It sort of starts getting specific about what industry do you think you're going to be bringing your innovation to, because programs are getting more targeted to the industry, especially because of the business networking aspects of these. For some, the industries also have different regulatory requirements, so it just makes sense to be in a more specific program. But sometimes it's hard to find those programs, and they may not be in all parts of the country. You may have to look around at others, but I'm sure Jessica can help you with that. We're glad to be, to put out questionnaires if we don't know people individually who are running programs like this. Like we had shared, the Power Bridge program in New York is a good program if you think you have clean tech innovations. That's a program centered at Columbia and NYU, and CUNY is involved in that. So if you have connections to any of those institutions, I would explore those. But it's really going to depend upon where you think the innovation could be first applied, or what we might be able to recommend as an alternative program. Other questions that people have, if you could just write them into the chat box, we're glad to take a look and see what we can answer for you. This is a fabulous presentation that Charlotte has shared about the launching a mouse sensor based on her work and Paul Feinstein's lab, and his career work in the olfaction area.
Yeah, and maybe there was like one thing I wanted to add. I think, it's a little daunting because it's a lot of work, it's time consuming. It's also mentally, I thought it was mentally very heavy as well, because you really have to think about where do we want to take this. So it may be like a little scary to embark on this thing, but know that I still have a life. So, I mean, I have 2 kids. They're young, 2 and 5. So I go to yoga almost every day just to keep my sanity. So it's still possible to combine this with, living in New York City and enjoying life. It's not that you just have to lock yourself up and not see daylight for the next 7 months. I think it's totally possible to combine it.
I think what you're bringing up is a really good point. The program is scheduled to be done as in combination with someone working full time. Now that doesn't mean this is a lot of work and you're going to be extremely busy, but it is scheduled so that there are only 6 full days in the 6.5-month program. Almost all of the other activities are scheduled to start after a full day of work, or or they start at 4 p.m. and then have a dinner meeting following that. So there are a couple exceptions to that. One is the date for those teams that are finalists. Those interviews will be on the Monday after Thanksgiving. That's the 28th of November. You will need your schedule for an hour and a half to come to the or the afternoon of the 30th. So you will find that out. So it's not a lot of times. I'll look at your schedules now, see if you're available,
Mary?
make sure you're around. Yeah.
There was something wrong with your... Yeah, this is better.
With my... Okay, thank you. Thanks for letting me know.
Yeah, okay.
Thank you. Thanks for the sound check there. So the program, just to repeat a little bit of that, in case you didn't get that, the program is scheduled so that you can do a full-time job around this. There are 6 full days in January, so check that on your calendar that you're available the 5th and 6th, the 12th and 13th, and the 19th and 20th. Those are full days. The rest of the activities are held in the evening in Midtown. The program is primarily meets in person along 42nd Street in different buildings. The rest of the program you'll meet online as we are right now. So it is definitely structured that way. There's a lot of work outside with that. Those meetings, so you don't just show up, you have to do work in between. The other thing I would suggest you do is first, if you're serious, if this sounds like something that you might want to do, check back in. There is a link to sign up at 2 o'clock for the Strengthening Your Application webinar. And then the other is the deadline, which is November 1st for the application. So you need to get this done by then. As Charlotte said, you need to talk to your tech transfer office if you haven't already to make sure that they are supportive of your application. With regards to that, one question that often comes up is, do you need to already have a patented idea, or can the patent happen after joining ELabNYC? Charlotte, where was yours with regards to when you started ELab?
So we had filed a provisional patent, and then during ELab we filed a second provisional, and then this year, August, so 12 months after filing the first provisional, we converted both into one regular patent, which is now under consideration at the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So we had a patented idea. It's not patented and we haven't licensed it, but we had at least a provisional, which is, if you have an idea, I would totally recommend to file a provisional. It's not that expensive, and tech transfer will take care of the cost. So far we have not paid for anything of the patent fees yet. But yeah, we had filed a provisional. Also because we were in the process of writing the paper describing the whole technology, so we wanted to make sure that everything was patented before we publish, because that's very important. Once you've published, you can't patent it anymore, because then it's like knowledge for the entire scientific community. So you really have to patent before you publish.
Right. So what we look for in the application is that there is, or what rather I would say that what the screeners are looking for is that you have some invention that will give you a competitive advantage in business. So they have a strong bias to people who have patentable innovation. So how do you prove that if you don't already have a patent filed or issued? that's where the connection to the tech transfer office comes in. We ask you as part of the application to identify who your tech transfer officer is. As part of our due diligence for applications, we contact your tech transfer officer and ask them if they think that you have a technology that is patentable and what the status of that technology is. If they say, well, it's not quite there yet, but it looks promising, and we have some confidence that this is going to be able to be something that's patentable, that is critical to us. And that for us is a risk we're willing to take. If they say it's not patented, we don't really think there's something in here, we don't know, what's going to be, what the status of this is and how this could be commercialized, you're going to need to provide somebody who believes there's something that's defensible there. We are willing to take some risk, but we need to provide somebody, and the tech transfer office is usually the easiest and most direct person if you're working with technology out of a research institution who can validate that you've got some patentable idea. We also will reemphasize that we do not want to see confidential information in the application. So if you have are thinking about filing or in discussions and you are not sure whether you have confidential information, as Charlotte was saying, you do not disclose it. If you are unclear about whether what you want to write is confidential or not, you need to talk to a lawyer, or you need to talk to a tech transfer office to make sure that what you're submitting is not confidential. The program is non-confidential, so we don't want to see the confidential information in the application. And you're welcome to ask any more specific questions about the program that you may occur to you afterward, but you haven't asked yet, or we're kind of running out of time here. Feel free to connect with me directly at mary.howard@elabnyc.com, or I encourage you to look at the elabnyc.com website. If you look, all of the past participants are listed on the website under participants, and they're listed by with their image. By cohort year, so you can identify who they are, what institution they're affiliated with, a basic description of their venture, and for the last 2 years, we have also attached LinkedIn profiles as well as executive summaries. So you can get a sense of the breadth of the participants and participating teams over the last several years by just going to the site. Many of those alums are very willing to provide candid feedback, as Charlotte has, to you about their experience in the program. We are here to encourage people for whom this is a good fit to apply. We're happy to help you all we can to complete the application and to write as strong an application as you can. The application is reviewed by an external group. We want to make sure you understand how they think about it, which is why we have a workshop on how you can learn from how screeners have responded in previous years to responses in the application. That session, again, will start at 2 o'clock this afternoon. Are there other questions that people have that while we're on the line we can answer for you? Please submit them in the chat box, and we'll respond to these. Again, I just point out that October 6th, if you want to meet the program team and some alums in person, go to the ELabNYC.com site and sign up to attend the information session in person, which will be in Midtown. And November 1 is the application deadline. You can find the application link on ELabNYC.com. If you have any questions, feel free to email me directly, and we'll see what we can do about answering it or putting you in touch with someone who can answer your question. So, Jessica, if there are any other questions you have or topics you want to make sure that we address before we wrap up, please let us know.
I think you guys have covered everything incredibly well. Thank you both for offering the opportunity to get more feedback on their applications to the I-Corps team. I know that they appreciate that. And Charlotte, thank you for talking and representing both parties. And again, just to mention to all the I-Corps teams, if you guys have any further questions on this and you want to direct them to me, please, please, please don't hesitate. My email is jessica.fields, F-I-E-L-D-S, at cuny.edu, or you can always email the standard nicerin@gmail.com.
This is great. Thank you so much for making this happen for us, Jessica. We love working with I-Corps teams. We like working with the nicerin node, and this is just has been a great info session, and let us know if there's anything else we can do to help you all out.
Ditto.
Okay, excellent. Well, we'll be wrapping it up. Have a really good afternoon, everybody, and look forward to running into you all soon.
Thank you.
Okay, bye-bye now.
Bye. Bye, Mary.
Bye, Charlotte.
Bye.